Hey guys, welcome back to the Deep Beauty Podcast. I'm really excited about today's guest. I have Beth Chen from the honestSpoonful.com. She's an autoimmune girly. She's gone through the ringer with autoimmune diseases. She had developed one herself and then had to sort of figure out her way through food sensitivity testing and all that kind of stuff to figure out how to lower her autoimmune response and reaction in her body. And from there, she developed a line of AIP flowers from BethBlends.com. So, Beth, thank you so much for taking the time to be on this podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's great to meet you.
Yeah, no, we both were just chatting right now about how we live in San Diego. She started a Facebook group for people that are in the San Diego area and want to meet up. And it's all about AIP and autoimmune diseases and how you don't really have to go through this struggle. And this is what you found on your website as well from the Honest Spoonful community that you grew, was that you don't have to go through the struggle of symptoms with your autoimmune disease. You can actually manage it. And this is the reason why I wanted to have you on, because I wanted to share with the listeners that are going through autoimmune related hair loss that there are ways to manage your symptoms. So, why don't we talk a little bit about your autoimmune disease and what you sort of learned along the way and how you got to the honestspoonful.com?
Well, ironically, until recently, I wasn't actually, didn't have a diagnosed autoimmune disease. Like this autoimmune disease that I have is actually relatively recent, like in the last 6 months.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But I've had every other autoimmune related disease, like endometriosis, food allergy or food sensitivities, things like that. So eczema, rashes, things like that, and hypothyroidism, like all the things that kind of point to your immune system being out of whack, essentially. And I've
Yeah.
had food sensitivities for my entire life, and I just thought it was something I had to live with and deal with. Like I didn't really understand. Um, I just didn't understand the root that there was potentially root causes for um this kind of issue. And it really wasn't until about 10 years ago where I just got so sick and my food sensitivities became really extensive and severe that I really started looking for alternative treatments because they became way Western medicine doctors said that they were livable. This was something I had to learn to live with. And I was just like, that just doesn't seem right. This just does not seem functional to me. And so I was like, well, I'm just gonna have to find another way. Like there was just, I just wasn't satisfied with that answer. So that's where I found the autoimmune protocol and I started there and it kind of opened up a lot of doors for me and I was able to find this community and find a lot of alternative treatments and, a hop, skip, and a 10 years later, here I am. And I'm doing a lot better. I'm probably the healthiest I've been in a really long time.
Wow, that's amazing. So you actually went on the autoimmune protocol before you were even diagnosed with an autoimmune disease.
Yes, because I had all these autoimmune related disorders and
Mhm.
that all kind of pointed to an autoimmune disease. Um, but there just was no diagnosis at that point. And so there was clearly gut dysfunction. There was clearly an issue with my immune system was reacting to foods and things like that. And there was a lot of inflammation. And so to reduce inflammation, what do? You try to eat an anti-inflammatory diet. And
Mhm.
that was one of the things that I could really control.
Mhm.
Um, because I didn't understand. I didn't have a naturopath. My Western medicine doctor said, you're going to have to get a lot sicker before we're able to treat you.
Wow.
So I didn't really know what else to do. And it seemed like food was an easy first step for me.
That makes a lot of sense to me. Were you diagnosed with any sort of gastro issue like irritable bowel or anything like that?
Well, yeah, I mean, my Western medicine doctor is like, basically, we don't know what's wrong with you. So we're just going to call it IBS.
So crazy how it's such an umbrella term that doctors like to throw around, and just like everything I feel like gets shoved in there. And
It means
Whereas,
nothing, and
yeah,
they recognize that.
yeah,
They're like, if it's not some sort of disease, or it's not like harmful in a way that it's going to spread or something like that, like
yeah.
we have no way of treating it. We're just going to call it IBS. We just don't have the resources to call it anything else.
Well, so what were your symptoms, if you don't mind sharing?
Well, I was actually like, um, well, when I initially got sick, it was I would eat food, and at that point, like I was having reactions to almost every single food. There was only a handful of foods that I wasn't having reactions to. So I
Mm.
just thought I was sick like all the time. And I had actually started losing my hair like long before I started having these like really severe reactions. It was like
Oh, wow.
probably about 4 years before. And that was probably the first sign that something was kind of wrong, like in like getting worse health wise, and
Hmm.
kind of leading up um to this like these reactions that I was having to food. And so I was having like I wasn't healing. I was having brain fog, fatigue, gas, bloating. I mean, just complete GI dysfunction. Like I was super sick. Um, and I was having like just infections, like everything was getting infected. I was having eye infections.
Oh, wow.
It was bizarre.
I feel like that's similar, like what you were saying about the gas and the bloating and stuff like that. Like I feel like I had that as well, like 10 years prior to figuring out that it's an actually some sort of autoimmune issue going on in my body. It sounds like, and a lot of like my clients that I talk to have the same thing. They don't realize that it's actually linked to an autoimmune disease. We're just taught that, oh, you have some gas or bloating, take this like medication and it'll make you feel a little bit better or whatever. But it's like continuously going on, then it's a problem. It's a
Right.
deeper problem.
Yeah, no one ever mentioned anything about my immune system. Like no one put it together. They said that the food that you're eating affects your gut,
Hmm.
nothing else. Like I was like, well, it just didn't make sense to me. I was like, because I eat and then like a few hours later, like I'm having like not even a few hours later, almost sometimes almost immediately, I'm having these reactions, but they're
Hmm.
non-allergic. They're definitely food sensitivities. They're not allergic reactions.
Hmm.
And it's very clearly affecting everything in my immune system, not just my gut. Like it didn't make sense to me. And it didn't go with, just didn't jive with what was happening to my body. I was like, okay, so if I stop eating dairy, all these issues very specifically go away. And
Hmm.
it's not just my stomach issues. Like it just doesn't make sense to me. So it took me a really long time to understand that it wasn't like there was nothing really wrong with my stomach per se, that this was more of an issue with my immune system.
Yeah.
And it was really me doing, I hate to say this, like I'm doing my own research, like Dr. Google, like it's not necessarily the place you want to get your information, but when you have no other options,
I mean, it's
you
the
don't
place
have
that
a choice.
a
You
lot of us like are finding our information from there. Like, I mean, and thank God that there is information to find because otherwise a lot of us can kind of just be sitting there suffering forever.
Mhm.
Had they told you to try the FODMAPs diet at all?
When I initially got sick, I was recommended to go to a gastroenterologist, which I
Hmm.
did. And he actually had a dietitian in his practice
Oh,
who
okay.
put me on an elimination diet, not the autoimmune protocol. That actually came a few years later.
Mhm.
And so by the time I got to see him, I'm like, I was eating nothing but rice because it was the one thing I could tolerate. And I was like,
Wow.
I was just so sick. I didn't know what else to eat. And so they said let's let's do this elimination diet. You need to eat more foods before we can really like assess what foods you're having issue with. We need to like
Right.
get you at a baseline. And so with the help of that initial dietitian, we were able to find my baseline and find it out exactly which foods I reacted to.
Right. Yeah, I think that's like something with food sensitivity testing is that you have to have like that variety in your diet before you can see what shows up on that sort of
Well,
chart.
I wasn't even doing like any specific test. Like I
Mhm,
don't really love, I've done food sensitivity tests before.
mhm.
I don't love them. I have found them to be wildly inaccurate.
Oh, really?
Yes, they have
Oh,
not
okay.
been like helpful for me, like in any way. For some people, like they are helpful for.
Mhm,
For me, like my reactions are so I react to so many different foods. Like
mhm,
it just wasn't really that helpful. Like I find me listening to my body
mhm.
was way more accurate than the testing was.
And is that the part that came from doing AIP and then the retesting phase and all that kind of stuff?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I just found that like once I removed all the inflammatory foods and was able to like reintroduce one food at a time, like
Mhm,
then it became really obvious what foods were a problem.
mhm.
So that just made it a lot easier.
It's funny when you find something like that and you realize you've solved this like giant puzzle and you just want everyone that is going through any sort of discomfort to like know that as well. But I feel like a
Hmm.
lot of people are resistant because I mean, it's not an easy thing to have to go through. I mean,
No.
the diet and then the reintroduction and all that kind of stuff and having patience with it. But I mean, if it can solve and like you're feeling amazing like now compared to before, it's
Hmm.
completely worth it.
Yeah. I mean, it's not, yeah. I mean, the reason why I started the blog and the business was because I was just like, there's nothing more isolating than being terribly sick.
Mhm,
None of your doctors know what's wrong with you.
mhm,
That's like a rock bottom and you are alone. Like, it's really scary to realize that nobody else can do this for you but you.
mhm.
No one else knows what it feels like. I mean, it's the definition of alone.
Yeah.
Um, and so when I started creating these recipes that were like AIP friendly and I was like, this is actually really delicious. Like it
Yeah.
took me a really long time to figure this out. And I don't know if I ever would have figured it out if I wasn't dedicated to like cooking. It's not something, if it wasn't something I enjoyed.
Mhm,
And it took years to really wrap my brain around um, the autoimmune protocol and just like the mindset around it. Like, I don't even think I really got it at first when I first started the blog. Like, I still don't,
mhm.
like, I was like, wow, I didn't realize like how much I really didn't understand. It took me a really long time to get it. And I was like, if I can make it a little bit easier, because the autoimmune protocol isn't meant to go on for years.
Yeah,
It's
exactly, yeah.
and I wouldn't even call the diet that I am currently on or have been on for years as the autoimmune protocol because it's much more restricted and it had to go on for much longer than what's recommended just
Mhm.
because my specific health issues. Um, and I was like, people don't have 3 years to figure this out.
Yeah.
They don't have years to get in this mindset. And I was like, if I could help people out and just like get them there right away, and so they don't feel the same way I felt, then that's enough for me. Like that's what I need. That's what I can give back, and it gave me a bit of a purpose.
I love that. So why don't you share, if you don't mind, like a little bit about your hair loss story and hair growth as well?
Okay, so when I've always had like pretty like fine hair. Like it doesn't curl, it's straight. Like you curl it, it's still straight. But I had a lot of it. I always had bangs growing up and they were like pretty thick. Like it was fine, it was pretty and shiny. Um, and then I grew out my hair and it was still, but then as I hit my 20s, I was like, yeah, it's kind of thinning out. And my mom's like, oh, that's just what happens as you get older. And I was like, yeah, the ripe old age of what, 21. So when I was about 25, like I cut bangs and I'm aging myself, but it was around 2005. And at that point, like the bangs with like these like long sides were like in. So when you put your hair up, like you'd have like these curtain bangs, I think is what they call them.
Yeah.
And everybody thought, that I immediately like grew them out,
Mhm.
but I didn't. They just fell out. Like the front, like my hairline was basically just receding. I had no baby hairs, nothing like that. And they would go through phases where like it would grow back in and then fall out, and start to grow in, and I'd get my hopes up, and then it would fall back out. And it pretty much followed that pattern for almost a decade. And
Wow.
well, actually it was over a decade, because my hair didn't really start to come back in until a few years ago, after I changed like my diet. And once I changed my diet, I started to see them come back in a little bit. Once I got on thyroid medication, they started to grow back in. And then once I was able to eat more of a variety of food, like my doctor was like, there's no way your hair is going to grow back in if you're so malnourished. Like
Right.
for 6 months at a time, I've been only able to tolerate 3 foods. And she's like, you're malnourished. There's no hair growth. Like your fingernails aren't gonna, nothing's gonna operate when you're malnourished. So you're not gonna get much hair. But after that, like my hair was like coming in, like it wasn't falling out in chunks anymore. It was so much thicker. Like it was a shocking change. Like when I finally like, with every little like change I made to my diet, my lifestyle, and seeking out like treatment for the root causes, my hair started to grow back in, and now my hair is thicker than it's been since I was a teenager. Like my hair, it's like I have like,
Wow.
little baby hairs and stuff. And like when I
Yeah,
put
I
my
can
hair up,
see.
like I used to have like these bald patches right here.
Yeah.
And that's the way that they had pretty much been throughout my like 20s and 30s, and because I'm in my 40s now. So like I'm in my 40s and I have more hair than I did when I was in my 20s.
Oh my God, I am loving that you're sharing this story because like I feel like a lot of people get scared that like they lose their hair and then it's never going to come back, or that it's been so long since they lost their hair and it's like 10 years later and it's not going to come back. So the fact that you're sharing this, that you
Mm-hmm.
have more hair now than you did when you were in your like teen years, like that's amazing. That's so hopeful. Like
Yeah,
for,
like
yeah.
I have people have joked with me, where even guys would have joked with me where they have health issues, they have chronic like heartburn and stuff like that, and they're bald. And he's like, it's gonna make my hair grow in if I change my diet. And I was like, mine
Probably.
did. I was like, maybe. Like
Yeah.
that may actually work for you. I don't know, but it just goes back to like the root causes for everybody's issues are slightly different. Like if you
Yeah.
have alopecia, like I don't know if it's gonna grow back in the
But
same
it
way.
could.
Mine,
Yeah.
I don't know. Um, but I was just metabolically unhealthy, and that was the reason for my hair loss. My thyroid was off, even though I had been to Western medicine doctors who said it was all within range.
Yeah.
When I finally went to a naturopath, they're like, no, like, Western medicine says you are within range. You are only slightly out of range for even for us, but if we put you on some medication, like you'll probably feel better. And I was like, my energy increased, my hair started growing back in. Like it made just a little bit of medication made a huge difference. And it was just another like stepping point to a full head of hair and more energy and just a healthier me.
And that was like your thyroid medication that they
Yeah,
prescribed?
I
Yeah.
mean, thyroid medication. There's a few other medications. Like there's low dose naltrexone, which just helps bring down like inflammation in general, and
Okay.
then just eating more food so I'm not, malnourished. All
Yeah.
those things have made like they're just all been really like huge in helping like just overall be healthier.
No, that's great. No, thank you so much for sharing that with your hair loss journey. Like, yeah, I can see here and it looks like it's really full. So
Yeah, like
that's
someone
amazing.
actually said to me last summer, they're like, we were just talking about hair, and she was like, "Oh, you're so lucky you have a nice full head of hair." And I was like,
Yeah.
"What are you talking about?" And I was like, "Oh my God, you're talking about me?" Like, because it's been 20 years without much hair at all. And so to someone like recognize it, like I was literally like, "Huh, maybe I do have hair now." Like I never been like I'm a busy mom, like I don't stop and think about it as much. And my outlook on how I look has
Yeah.
changed. Like
Yeah.
how I feel about my body has changed very much from 25 to like 43. Like I don't do things to look good necessarily anymore. Like, I mean, I'm still pretty vain, but I'm not like, it's not all about how I look. Like, I'm very much grateful for what my body can do for me and how strong it is. And that's like been my focus. So it really took me a little bit of time to like accept that as as a compliment and to like recognize it as true.
Yeah.
Because I had identified for 20 years as something else. And so
Yeah.
I just like, it took a minute to be like, whoa, like I didn't really recognize that my body had done that. Like that it was a small like win.
It's a good win.
Oh, it's a
Yeah.
great win, but like you don't always stop along a very hard health journey, a very long and hard health journey. You don't always stop to appreciate how far you've come. You
Yeah.
just see how far you have yet to go. And so it was one of those
Yeah.
moments where I was like, wow, like that's a huge, huge leap. And I didn't even recognize it. I didn't really appreciate it. And I really needed to like accept that compliment and like just accept it as part of me now.
Well, I thank you for sharing that part because I think that's like something that even myself, I've been guilty of, like being along your health journey and seeing how far you have to go. Um, yeah, like just even yesterday, oh my gosh, yeah, I can like looking in the skin and looking at looking in the mirror at my skin and thinking, gosh, because I had another diagnosis for another autoimmune disease that was affecting my skin, which I had shared on my channel, but just looking in the mirror and thinking, gosh, when is this going to go away? And it's like, no, it has come such a far, far way. So I thank you for sharing that because
Yeah.
everybody needs to hear that
Because no
reminder.
matter what kind of expert you are, like it's hard. It's
Yeah.
hard to like stop it. When you're really feeling terrible, it's really hard to appreciate like even the smallest win.
Yeah. And it makes you think about back on those times when you were younger and you didn't have to think about any of this stuff and that health was just something that you took for granted. And
Mm-hmm.
now when you're in a position where it's like you can't, it's like,
Mm-hmm. And like the way I look at it now is that I am grateful. Like, not everybody is like me, where they get sick in like, I was like 31 or something when I first got sick. So, not everybody's, there's some 10-year-olds or 11-year-olds or infants that are
yeah,
diagnosed with autoimmune diseases.
that's
They've
true.
never had a normal life
Yeah.
free of disease. And so I just think of it as like, wow, I'm really grateful I was allowed my childhood to be a child and
Yeah.
not have to focus on any of this stuff. And I'm glad that I was an adult when this happened and I could think independently, I could communicate
Yeah.
freely. I was fully developed, so nothing hindered my development. Um, and so I think about it in those terms. Like I was allowed to have a childhood and I didn't get sick until I could mentally and physically handle it.
I love that you said that. I love that. Yeah. It's so true. It's that perspective shift. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because like when you are older and you get sick, it's like you do have that power within yourself to be able to like find these things and find a way to heal and stuff.
You're able to communicate it, you're able to advocate for yourself, and as a child like
Yeah.
you were really dependent on somebody else to do that for you,
Yeah.
and unless they've been in your shoes, like that's really hard.
Yeah.
Your parent doesn't know how you feel,
Yeah.
so I'm grateful for that.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, you're welcome.
And so I wanted to ask you like, so how did Beth Blends come about?
Well, I mean, the number one thing people missed with the autoimmune protocol was like baked goods, breads, things like that.
Bread.
Like that is
Yeah.
just, I mean, it's one thing. It's easy to like recreate a meal that's really delicious. It's really hard to recreate like a baked good.
Hmm.
It's just hard. And I know there were some options out there, but they were very specific options and they weren't a lot for the autoimmune protocol.
Hmm.
And so I wanted to create something where it was versatile, that it could be used for people on the autoimmune protocol and even like beyond. Specifically people like with food allergies, where this is like a forever diet. It's
Yeah.
not even a diet, it's a requirement, it's a medical necessity. Because my son And neither of us, I've never been able to eat nuts. And so if you're gluten-free and nut-free, like good luck finding anything in the grocery store. It's
Yeah,
just
that's true.
everything has almonds in it, and it's quite discouraging. And so I wanted to have like, I just wanted options for myself and for others. And that like baked goods is like the number one thing that they missed. And so this is kind of the way that I found to just make it easier for people.
You're doing God's work for sure.
Well, thank you. I don't know about that, but maybe.
I mean, it's true. I mean, I've been on and off of AIP like a few times now, and that is the hardest part. It's that sort of like carby, like you want something, and it's like kind of hard to satiate that when you can't get it through
Hmm.
that particular diet, you know?
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
think it's
Like you
great.
just want a burger sometimes with
Yeah,
a bun. Like
with the
wrapped
bun.
in
Yeah.
lettuce just doesn't cut it. So that was like my first like thing. I was like, I want a hamburger bun. And so that was the first thing I made. And I was like, oh, people have got to have this.
So you have two flowers that you sell on your website right now?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
like, can you kind of talk a little bit about what like, I mean, obviously not ratios and stuff like that, but like what kind of flowers you use?
Hmm. Sure. So the idea is that they are all like grain free. They are AIP and paleo friendly. And there's one that was made with like tapioca, cassava, and coconut, and
Oh,
they're both
nice.
self-rising, so it's got baking soda and cream of tartar in it. And then the other one is made completely nut and cassava free, so that there's no coconut. It's made in a nut-free facility. So people with allergens know that it's made in a facility where there's no nuts, there's no gluten. I mean, in fact, it's the top 9 allergen free. So there's no seeds or
Wow.
anything processed in that facility. So we know everybody's safe.
That's awesome. That's so good. And then when it comes to like your autoimmune disease, are you okay to talk about like what it is exactly now that you've
Sure.
actually been diagnosed?
Sure. So I was diagnosed last year with antiphospholipid syndrome, which ironically does not explain any of my other symptoms. This was just like, this is totally like a fork in the road. We did not see this coming. Like, of all the autoimmune diseases I could get, we did not foresee this one. And so basically, it just causes you to get blood clots.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
but I was like, oh, okay. Like, I've actually have a history of family members getting blood clots. And so I kind of assumed that was always part of my, family history. And that was something that I would always need to watch out for anyway. So it really wasn't like, I don't know, it wasn't shocking to me. And half the time I forget that I have it. So I don't, and it's really mild. I don't need any sort of medication for it right now. So
They
um,
didn't try to put you on blood thinners or anything like that?
it's not even severe enough to require them at this
Oh,
point.
okay.
So, I mean, knock on wood, but I hope that continues.
And so how were they able to diagnose you with that? Like what kind of testing was done?
Just a blood test.
Just a blood test? And they just
Yeah.
thought, okay, well, let's try this one and hopefully this is the
Yeah. I
one.
mean, on occasion, my doctor would test me like that, the inflammation marker, that test. Um, they tested every couple of years or so, and she just happened to test it this time. And she's like, oh, you now have an autoimmune disease.
Wow.
So that was the one that popped up.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's great that you know now what it is. And so, like, you should be able to, I mean, through diet, through lifestyle, and all that kind of stuff, it shouldn't be something that will harm you in the future or anything like that.
I mean, I can't say that for sure. Like, you can develop an autoimmune disease at any point in your life. And, my health is always changing and stuff always kind of pops up. It's like playing whack-a-mole.
Yeah.
So you just kind of have to take it one thing at a time and hope that it doesn't get any worse, and hope that there's always new treatments and things like that. And I mean, I know you were talking about not having medication, but to be honest, like I am on other medications to help manage the inflammation, other health issues I have. I'm on a lot of supplements because I am team do whatever it takes.
Yeah.
And if I didn't do manage my both food and medication, like I don't think I would be here. I don't think I would be healthy. Um, and I would certainly would not have this much hair.
Well, I mean, I'm not anti-medication, definitely not. But I think that when it comes to whatever medical issue that you're going through, and not finding the answers like that, it's definitely worth checking out like the root cause of the issue. Like that's my thing, is just whatever the symptom is on the outside. And for my community, that's hair loss. I
Mhm.
feel like it's never just about that symptom. That's a symptom
Yes.
of a bigger issue. And so
Yeah.
that you really need to kind of hack your health and figure out what it is that's going on. And if you have to take medication, that's fine. But like it's also, it's not, it doesn't just stop there. You can't just
Mhm.
think like, okay, I'm just going to take this magical pill that's going to solve everything and I'll never have any problems ever again. No, it's like you have to look at other things like your diet, your lifestyle, your stress reaction, all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
we have to advocate for our own health.
I'm always really like hesitant to talk about some of like the medications that I'm on, or, just because I don't want people to think that there's like one pill that magically made me better. It's like, no, there's
Yeah.
been a series of treatments, a series of like different stages in my health. And there were multiple things that have gotten me to this point. And let's
Yeah.
keep in mind that I didn't get sick yesterday. I got sick 12 years ago.
Yeah.
This was not like a short-term fix. I mean, there are a few things that I have done that have really like jump started a healing process and sent me in a really good direction. Um, but there is no one magic pill.
Yeah.
Like there is just not. Like every time I think I'm like stable, I mean another like shoe drops and like I have to go solve another, puzzle because there's another mystery health issue that I need to resolve. And we look at the root causes and things like that, and we treat those root causes as they pop up. And your reason for like hair loss is not the reason for my hair loss.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to speak in like absolutes because we're all so different and there's not just one. I wish there was a magic pill that would
Yeah.
just
It would be
make
nice.
things better, but
Yeah.
just isn't.
There just isn't, no.
Yeah.
So is there anything that you would want to share with the people that are watching and or listening, just to help with their own health going forward?
I don't know. Just like hang in there.
No,
Like
that's
so
good.
many people like recently I've had a few like breakthroughs. I've been able to like eat a lot of extra foods and stuff like that. And people are like, I'm so jealous. I wish I could be as healthy as you. And I was like, hold up. Like a year ago, I was like 95 pounds and could eat like three foods. So that's just like, let's not go there.
Yeah.
You know? Like, this is me right now. I don't know where I'll be in 6 months from now. Like this, and I'm just telling you what I did in the last little bit to get me to this point, to this plateau. Um, but autoimmune disease, this chronic illness that I have is for life and it is chronic. So that I mean, like, let's not play that game. Like,
Yeah.
just hang in there. So wherever you are right now, it may suck, but it doesn't mean you're going to stay there, and you have to like find a way forward. Um, because I've been there, and in 6 months from now, these roles may be reversed. I may be wishing for your health and wellness, and I may be in an awful place. So you just got to hang in there. Like nothing is permanent unless you make it permanent.
Yeah. I mean, I love that because like yeah, I get a lot of people asking like, okay, well, what's the one thing that I need to do? And it's just like, well, everybody's journey is individual. It's so
Mhm.
true.
When they're like, what do I need to do? I was like, you need to like find a naturopath or a functional doctor. You need to work with a medical like professional and like look at your root causes.
Yeah.
Because if you're not doing that, like if you're eating well, you're managing your stress, you're doing everything you can do independently, like then there's other issues at play and you really need to like look at them. And I'm not a doctor. I
Mhm.
can't advise you. I can just tell you my experience, like, but you really need a medical professional.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. And thank you so much for creating Beth Blends. And for
Yeah.
those of you that are going on AIP or going through AIP, definitely check out her website. So I'm going to put all of the links in the show notes or the description for this podcast, but you can go ahead and like let people know where to find you online.
Yeah, you can check out my blog, which is thehonestSpoonful.com, or you can go purchase the flowers over at bethblends.com. And then I'm pretty active on Instagram as well, at The Honest Spoonful and at Beth Blends.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Beth, for taking the time to be on the podcast.
Oh, it was my pleasure. It was fun. Thank you so much.
No problem.